So I know it's been a while since I have uploaded or streamed or anything like that, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Um, some of which I'm going to talk about right now. Others I'm not going to, mostly because they're very personal reasons. Um, Overall, though, the main reason is my health. I have a genetic condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EHLERS hyphen DANLOS. I have what used to be called type 3, is referred to as hypermobility type. Um, Ehlers-Danlos, as I said, is a genetic condition, which means it is passed on from parent to child. It is passed on dominantly in most cases, so there's a 50-50 chance that it gets passed on, basically. I guess I'm kind of a unique case in some ways because nobody else in my family was ever diagnosed with it, was never showing any signs of it. So I'm the first in my entire family, even going back generations and generations. So it's been a learning experience for sure. Just trying to manage all the symptoms and everything. I was only diagnosed about 2.5 years ago, when I was 27, 28. I'm 30 now. And in that time, it went from being undiagnosed chronic pain to diagnosed and now getting some of the comorbidities or other illnesses that are caused by an illness or tend to happen with another illness. This includes what some of us in the EDS community refer to as the EDS trifecta. There are three commonly seen comorbidities. They include gastroparesis, mast cell activation syndrome, and dysautonomia, most commonly in the form of POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I I have POTS. I have dysautonomia. It's not severe. Some people have syncope, which is basically passing out because your blood pressure goes too low and your heart rate goes too high at the same time, or one or the other. I do not have syncope, thankfully. I don't have that issue as of yet, anyway. We've tried a medication before for my heart rate, but that didn't really help. When I first started having issues with my heart rate and everything, we did a couple of different tests that are fairly easy, I guess you could say. Basically, all it entails is you lie down for a little while. They take your resting heart rate and blood pressure. Then you sit up, and a few minutes later, they'll do the same thing. They'll take your heart rate and blood pressure again, and then you stand up, and they'll do repeat the process. You wait a few minutes, they do it again, and basically, dysautonomia tends to be categorized, especially POTS, tends to be categorized by a increase in heart rate by, I think it's at least 20 or 30 beats per minute, from each change in position. And then orthostatic hypertension is another dysautonomia part. That's categorized by low blood pressure when changing positions, usually. There's kind of a fine line between the two. A lot of us have in the EDS community have kind of debated on what really is the difference, other than tachycardia syndrome, POTS, tends to, as the name implies, involve an increase in heart rate, rather than just the blood pressure aspect. So it kind of goes along with that. Dysautonomia covers, like, I don't know, I think it's like 10 different syndromes that have to do with the nervous system. So dysautonomia is one of the trifecta. The second is gastroparesis, which is a condition of the stomach where it doesn't process food the way it should. Um, the pylorus valve in your stomach doesn't open like it's supposed to after you eat. It's what moves the food from the stomach to the intestines, and usually with gastroparesis there is some malfunction of that valve, of the nerves in that valve, where it doesn't open, and so the food sits in there and basically ferments, and you end up throwing up or getting really nauseous. It also involves feeling bloated after eating a small amount of food, being unable to stomach certain foods. More fibrous foods are more difficult for people with gastroparesis. Softer and liquid foods are usually easier to handle. And so you get a lot of difficulties with nutrition and losing weight and things like that with gastroparesis, plus the nausea and the vomiting at times and things like that, depending on the severity of the gastroparesis. There's a bunch of different tests that can help diagnose that or rule out other issues. And I've had chronic nausea since the beginning of February 2018. So it's been 8 months, and we don't have a diagnosis yet, and we've done several different tests, and they've not given us any answers to issues with my stomach, but they've given us a few other answers, like a new food allergy. Yay, that makes two. And a couple other things. And then the third one is MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, which is kind of an allergy in a way. Basically, you eat high histamine foods like tomatoes or sometimes it's citrus, things like that. There's a whole bunch of things that can cause mast cell activation, but basically your body reacts like there's inflammation. So your cheeks will get really red. Sometimes there's a rash. Sometimes you might have an inflammation in your esophagus a little bit, and things like that. And that's usually treated with a couple of different antihistamines, plus a special diet that helps avoid things like tomatoes and such that tend to activate that syndrome. And I don't have that we know of. I do have something called eosinophilic esophagitis. Eosinophils are a type of white blood cell that react. They're what reacts when you have an allergic reaction. And mine are reacting in my esophagus. And usually that would indicate some sort of allergic reaction to a food. The weird thing is, I'm not eating anything that I'm allergic to, though. I'm allergic to peanuts quite severely. I have EpiPens and everything. But I avoid them because ingesting them, I will go into anaphylactic shock. So I don't eat them. I try not to handle them with bare hands or anything either because it'll make my skin really itchy and my fingers will swell up and it's annoying. But with eosinophilic esophagitis, the lining of my esophagus is just coated in these eosinophils, and basically, like, we've tried a couple of different medications to kind of try to help, as my allergist puts it, shoo them away from the esophagus to get that inflammation away. My allergist is a bit of a character, but I like him. He's a good doctor. But yeah, none of that has gotten us any closer to solving the mystery of my chronic nausea. And it's been progressing over that 8 months. Not rapidly, but enough to kind of make my doctor just kind of go, what's going on here, kind of thing. So he's ordered a new test that hopefully once the insurance approves it, might give us an answer or two. But I guess we'll see. Hopefully we'll get some answers though, because it's, like I said, it's been 8 months and we have no answers, and it's frustrating because it also means that I end up taking time off of work at times because the nausea is just so much to the point where I I, I can't work. Even with the medications that they've given me for it. I've tried Zofran, which is the brand name for ondansetron. It's an anti-nausea medication that I've taken before when I was pregnant with my first child. Late in my pregnancy, I tried that one as I had a hyperemesis with her, which is just a fancy way of saying really bad morning sickness. And we tried 2 other medications before that, before we tried the Zofran. And I'm actually, they moved me off of the Zofran for this chronic nausea and onto one of those other medications that didn't work with the hyperemesis. Hopefully, I'll be able to take it, and hopefully it'll help better. I've taken it a couple of times now, and it's worked about as well as the ondansetron has. It's Phenergan, Phenergan. I just stopped and think about how to spell it for a second there. And I mean, it helps some, but it also takes a long time to kick in, and then it wears off really quickly for me. So I don't know that it's doing me much good, but I have to try it for a couple of weeks before we know whether it'll do any good or whether we try something else. My gastroenterologist is a really good doctor. I actually really like him. He's very straightforward, and he will do all these different tests that he thinks need to be done, and he explains them all very well too. So I like that because some doctors will just be like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do this test," and then they don't tell you what it's for or anything. So it's kind of one of those, "Oh, okay, I guess," kind of thing. But he also listens really well about different things. When I explained, it's the last time I saw him before February, before all of this chronic nausea stuff started. I hadn't seen him for a couple of years, so it was before my diagnosis with EDS, and I was explaining it to him, and he knew some about it because it does affect organs and joints and everything. It affects the collagen in your body. Your body produces faulty collagen, which is what organs are made of. So it can really affect all the organs quite a bit. So when I was explaining it to him, he was like, "Yeah, I've heard of it. Obviously I know that it can cause some issues with organs and stuff." And I said, "Yeah, this is one of the main concerns. Gastrointestinal wise, is gastroparesis. Is that something that we need to consider based on my symptoms, kind of thing?" And he was like, "Yeah, I definitely wouldn't rule it out just because of how it can affect everything and based on your symptoms and stuff, but I want to make sure it's not something else first, that we're not overlooking something else just because this is the obvious, comorbidity kind of thing." So, yeah, we've been doing a lot of tests with that. And one of the issues with EDS in general is finding good doctors that will listen, because it's not like a rare disorder, but it's one that, because it doesn't have a lot of outward symptoms, doctors tend to dismiss it, and you tend to get told that it's all in your head a lot because a lot of it is pain, and you can't quantify pain for somebody else. It's hard to prove that you're in pain sometimes. There, in terms of like the hypermobile EDS that I have, there is what's called a Baton score or Baton scale that basically kind of helps you show how flexible you are. However, some people have very mild HEDS to where they don't score very high on that Baton scale, and so it's kind of up to the rheumatologist to do the evaluation and really see where that score is, and also just take into account any other issues that the patient is having. I have gone through 2 rheumatologists and 2 cardiologists now. My first rheumatologist blamed a lot of it on my weight. I am overweight, but I've been trying to lose weight, so I mean that's not really like the biggest concern. And I mean, yes, being overweight can hurt your joints and everything. I know that. I'm not dismissing that fact. But when the rheumatologist focuses solely on your weight as the issue and not anything else, it kind of, you know, makes you go, okay, you're not really listening to me, kind of thing. And at one point, she even asked, are you double jointed, or do you think you're double jointed, kind of thing. And I showed her some things that I can do that normal people can't do. Um, and she brushed it off as just an oddity because I said I've always been able to do that. I've always been more flexible than my family members and friends and everything. And for her, she was like, "Well, you've always been that way, so it's just an oddity. It's not a symptom or a sign of anything." And I don't know. I saw her one other time after that for a follow up, and she again just focused on my weight even after I told her that in the 18 months before I had seen her, I had lost a total of 50 pounds over that 18 months. And she actually seemed genuinely shocked because even though I'd lost that much, I was still overweight, medically speaking. But I was working full time. I was very active in my jobs. I work retail, so I'm moving a lot and everything. So it's not like I'm just sitting at home doing nothing. I am active and I move a lot. So her telling me try harder to lose weight because just moving around at work isn't enough. Like, okay, but doing anything more than that, like even lightweight, lifting weights lightly and repetitive motions and things like that all hurt. They make me hurt in a way that exercise shouldn't hurt, kind of thing. Um, and so I decided to ask for a second opinion. And at the time, I was working at Walmart, and a coworker of mine was talking about his wife, his first wife, had lupus, and it took them a bit of a fight as well. He was an older gentleman, but it took them a bit of a fight as well, and it took them going up to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota to get her diagnosis and get her treatments and everything. And so he gave me the name of the doctor up there that he had seen, that he and his wife had gone to for her illness, and said, he's really good. He listens, he does his research and everything. And so I had put that request in, but because I am on Medicaid, which if you're outside the U.S., that is government-run insurance for you have to meet a whole bunch. There's a bunch of different criteria you can use to meet that, but it's basically like universal health care, but for a select few that qualify, kind of thing. It's dumb that only certain people qualify, but that's a whole nother topic. Anyway, I am very fortunate to qualify for that. However, Medicaid does not like to send you out of state unless they absolutely have to. And I don't live in Minnesota, so the Mayo Clinic is out of state for us. However, we do have the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics, which is kind of like the Mayo Clinic of our state. If you are unfamiliar with the Mayo Clinic, as I keep mentioning it, the Mayo Clinic is very highly regarded in terms of doctors and treatments and things like that. They are one of the foremost clinics in the entire nation, in America, and you get really good care there. You get really good doctors, and they are very much worth the trip if you can make it. They are on par with also Johns Hopkins out on the East Coast. They're pretty well known, to say the least. So the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics is the Mayo Clinic of Iowa. And so I got a referral to see Dr. Leonard in Iowa City in Iowa, at their medical specialties clinic. He's a rheumatologist there, and it's a bit of a wait to get in, but they did put me on a cancellation list so that if a cancellation happened, they could, offer me that slot instead. So it's like I said, it's been about 2.5 years. It was March 2016 that I saw him and got to meet with him, and he had a student with him who was just starting her rotation on the rheumatology um, department, and I felt kind of bad for her because he basically like I was in the exam room, and he came in with her, and he's like, I have a student with me, is that fine? And I was like, yeah, that's fine, not a big deal, kind of thing. And he turns to her and goes, all right, you got about half an hour to get her story and everything. I'll be back to check in with you then. And walks out. And, and she just has this like deer in the headlights look. And she's looking at me. And she goes, yeah, this is my first day in rheumatology. I'm not even entirely sure what I'm supposed to ask or anything. So I guess tell me how this started, kind of thing. And she was great though. I mean, once we got kind of things going, I gave her a few ins on things of, okay, so this is how it started. This is what the last dermatologist said. This is what I can do. And showed her, as we EVSers call it, as zebras call it, I did some party tricks, which we don't recommend doing on a regular basis, just because the more you do them, the more it damages your joints. And so I showed her, the common one that I use is bending your hand at the wrist, and putting your thumb to the inside of that same wrist along your forearm. Normal people can't make the thumb touch the forearm. They are not flexible enough, and you're not supposed to be able to do that without it really, really hurting. Yeah, it doesn't hurt. So I can do that. And she did a little bit of a physical exam on things to see kind of how flexible I am in certain areas. Which is what the Baton scale does, is it tests your flexibility in certain joints. And you have to be flexible to a certain degree for it to count as points. And there's a possible 9 points in the entire scale. It covers knees, hips, back, elbows, and spine. I said back. I'm forgetting what I know I am. But there's 9 points possible anyway. And she did a little bit of that with me, but not very much. And so Dr. Leonard came back in and was like, okay, so what did we learn? And he's an older gentleman, and he's Polish, so he's got a little bit of an accent too. But I actually really like him. He's very fun, but he's very straightforward too. And so she goes over everything, and I'm waiting for her to get to that hypermobile bit, and um and she goes through everything and talks about my last dermatologist and everything, and then she goes, oh yeah, and she's really flexible, but she says her rheumatologist kind of brushed that off. And he kind of looks at me, and he goes, how flexible are we talking? And so I do the hand trick again, and he goes, yeah, don't do that. And in a very serious manner, it tells me not to do that ever again, kind of thing. And he goes, well, once you add in that hypermobility of yours, there's only one thing it could be: Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And if you watch the show American Ninja Warrior, you have probably heard about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, as one of the contestants, his wife has it. And when you first saw him, she was actually wheelchair bound. And she has gone from wheelchair bound to actually competing in one of the more recent seasons of American Ninja Warrior, which I think is awesome. But I also want to put a caveat on that. That transformation of hers is not always going to be repeatable for everybody. This is why we refer to ourselves as zebras, because no two zebras have the same stripes, just like no tigers have the same stripes, whatever. You get the analogy. We don't all manifest the same way. We aren't all able to be treated the same way. And what works for one patient isn't always going to work for another. So yes, it's really awesome, and I'm so happy for her that she went through that transformation of from being wheelchair bound to being able to do so many things and compete and everything. But it's not something that happens for all of us.
With that, though, there are some things that work for most of us. For the most part, physical therapy, especially with a EDS aware physical therapist, helps a lot. I did do some of that. And so I've done some of that, and it helps some. I just need to remember to keep up with it on my own. After I saw Dr. Leonard the first time, he sent me home with like all this, okay, we're doing all of these, tests to check for other things that could be going on with it, and all sorts of other stuff. And then, I see him yearly. So I saw him back in March, and he repeats the Baton score every time that you see him so that you can kind of measure your progress. So, if your score keeps going up, you're progressing, further and further. And this is a progressive illness, so it's going to do that. And there's not a cure for it. Like I said, it's genetic, so there's not really a way to get rid of it like you would, cancer or, anything else that's curable. But when I saw him when I saw him for my follow-up last year, he was like, okay, yeah, this, you don't look too bad, you're still about the same and everything. When I saw him this year, he did the Baton score and a couple of extra ones to kind of check like my hips a little better and things like that. And he goes, yeah, we don't even need the Baton scale for you. You're beyond it. Which, I mean, he said it in a joking manner, so it's kind of funny, but then at the same time, like that reality sets in of oh, I've progressed that far in the last year that I'm so flexible that I score beyond the 9 points on the Baton scale. So, I mean, it's a bit disheartening as well. And then you add in all the other issues with the chronic nausea and the POTS dysautonomia stuff, and it's just like, really, like, I'm only 30, and like the number of illnesses I've acquired in the last 2 years is ridiculous. And I laugh, yes, because I mean, there's not much else to do. I mean, you treat it as best you can, and you try to live life as best as you can, and everything. And I mean, you have to laugh or you break down, and it's hard. It's really hard. And I I do have a job currently, and thankfully my managers are really really understanding. They are aware of my situation, and they try really hard to work with me on my needs and everything. And it helps that one of them actually has lupus, so she understands really really well about pain and everything. And all of that. So thankfully, they've been really good about that, and we've been trying to adjust my schedule to try to prevent some of my pain flares because I've had a couple of them now, and my last one was actually really really bad to where I ended up being off of work for a week, 3 days in pain and 4 days recovering from it. So yeah, it sucks. And those pain flares are ridiculous. Before I got my emergency pain meds, I ended up in the ER 2 or 3 times because my regular pain medication and topical pain relief stuff wasn't even touching it. To the point where my roommate was watching me just cry in pain, and there was nothing he could do about it to help. And so he drove me to the ER and everything. And I mean, we have a small ER in town, so it's not like I had to go far. But yeah, it's not fun, and you get some doctors who will judge you because you're in the ER and you're in pain and you need medication that will help, which usually means a narcotic. And they, even in our small town, you get some of those doctors that will be a bit judgy and think you are just there seeking drugs as a drug addict, and you're not. Yes, you're there for treatment, but you are not there to get drugs, kind of thing. And it's frustrating. But I actually haven't experienced that at our emergency room, but the next town over where we used to live, their emergency room, one of their doctors, or actually it was really his nurse, the nurse was a bit judgy on that. And that was annoying because I was also pregnant at the time, and having issues, but that's a whole other story. But never are we drug addicts. And actually, because we are aware of side effects and things from drugs and drug misuse, we are actually some of the most careful users of narcotics and opioids because we know what can happen, and because of the way our bodies are, we handle medication differently than normal people as well. So we know that it's gonna cause us more problems in the long run if we were to misuse. So we're kind of hyper aware of that kind of thing. And yes, some of us need opioids or narcotics of some sort in order to function normally because our pain is that high. I am thankfully not on a daily narcotic medication. My emergency medication is a narcotic, but I take it only when absolutely necessary, when nothing else is working. And I hate taking it actually because it makes me feel so out of sorts, and I don't sleep very well when I'm on it either, and it makes me extremely nauseous. So I really try hard not to take it if I don't absolutely have to. It's a pretty powerful one. I'm not going to say the name of it either. But that's another thing with a chronic illness, and not just EDS, but any chronic illness, is medication management. I currently take a variety of medications for all of my illnesses. I take 4 or 5 pills in the morning, and then 2 in the evening and 1 at night. And then my anti-nausea medicine, that the Phenergan that I mentioned, is an as needed as well, along with my narcotic pain medication and the Zofran that goes with it. And I also have an inhaler for for use when I get sick. I tend to have kind of breathing problems, so that I have that inhaler. Plus, I have the EpiPens for my allergies. Yeah, I made a list the other day, and I take quite a few medications. I take, for pain medication, I have gabapentin. Like I said, it's a non-narcotic pain medication. I take that 3 times a day. And then I have Zyrtec. I take Zyrtec daily. Even in like the fall and winter, I take it year round every day. Not just for my allergies, which include environmental allergies, in addition to peanuts and, of all things, navy beans, which are in the same family as like Great Northern, just any white kidney bean, basically. That whole family I'm allergic to, apparently. It also helps with another illness that I have called Meniere's disease. It's a form of vertigo that is caused by fluid buildup in your ear, that will make you dizzy and give you all those fun vertigo issues. And so taking that daily helps the fluid drain better, and just kind of keeps the fluid at a good level so that it doesn't cause the vertigo issues. And so as long as I take that, I'm pretty good. I don't have any vertigo issues then. And then I take 2 proton pump inhibitor class medications. They're stomach medicines, acid reducers to kind of, they're supposed to kind of help with that nausea, but also with the eosinophilic esophagitis as well. I take pantoprazole in the morning, and then I take omeprazole in the evening, which is basically Prilosec. in terms of over-the-counter medication. And then I have the Phenergan for when the nausea gets bad. So that's a snapshot of my daily medications. I have a weekly pill organizer that is broken down by day, and then within the day it breaks down between morning, noon, evening, and bedtime. So the only spot that's not technically used is noon. I put the Phenergan in the noon one in case I need it. It's there, but I don't have to take it every day, thankfully. In addition to medications like that, for the EDS patients, we have a lot of different topical things like BioFreeze or Icy Hot to help with managing pain symptoms. I also have something by a company called Village Naturals. They have a therapy line. I use their therapy for aches and pains muscle relief lotion. It's the label kind of amuses me. It says 90.74% naturally derived. Like, it's very specific. But it uses juniper, sage, and wintergreen to help with aches and pains and things like that. So when I have a pain flare, I tend to put either BioFreeze or that lotion on there. It also comes as a bath soak and a body wash, both of which can be helpful as well. So a lot of us have different combinations of things like that that can help. And there's a subreddit for it for EDS, and we have our own Discord server as well, which has been probably the hugest thing for me in terms of support. Is I went from having nobody around me really understand what I'm going through. Like, I could make analogies all day, and they would never get what I really was trying to convey. But in the EDS Discord, we have over 400 members, and I think we calculated that it's like 60% of us are actually fully active on the server, which is a huge amount for any Discord server. But we have a lot of different channels in that server, and a lot of resources. So going from having nobody really know what I'm going through to having 400 plus members that get it. Like, I can make an analogy and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's exactly, that's a perfect way to describe it," kind of thing. And it's just incredible because we can swap experiences and give tips or tricks, or say this is what you need to be looking for in this specialist, or if you're in the same area as somebody else, they might go, "Oh well, this is who I see. Go try to find somebody at this clinic because they're really good, or stay away from that clinic because they're really bad," kind of thing. So yeah, we share a lot of information amongst us, and it helps us so much, especially when we get new users in who either are undiagnosed but suspect that they might have EDS or something related to it, or you get people who are newly diagnosed and they're like, "I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, or how do I handle this?" And because it's very overwhelming, because now there's all these lifestyle changes that you have to adapt, and all this information, and how do I cope, and everything. So it gets very very overwhelming at times. And it's one of those, I now have a place that I can turn to and go, "I have this going on, is this normal?" kind of thing. And that's actually a fairly common occurrence in there is, yeah, so I can do this thing, and my friend or boyfriend or family member or whatever says that's not normal. And we all go, "Well, it's EDS normal." kind of thing. So it can get kind of funny and interesting, and overall it's just a very supportive community. Um, so yeah, I'm really thankful that I found them. And I have a friend who has Crohn's disease as well, so she really gets it a lot too. And I have 2 kids, and we didn't know about EDS when we had them. So, there's a 50-50 chance that that they have it. And my almost 11-year-old has been showing signs of having it. And we actually just had conferences for my youngest, whose teacher mentioned that he seems to have a bit of dysgraphia, which is basically just meaning that the muscles in his hands aren't very strong. So his handwriting isn't very good, which is another thing that happens with EDS patients is because the collagen, the connective tissue in your body is faulty, you sometimes have trouble gripping things. When she said that and kind of went through a little bit of an explanation of why she thinks he might have it, I turned to my son and I said, yeah, you get that from me, kiddo, kind of thing. And she goes, oh, did you have dysgraphia too, or do you have it? And I said, no, I have a genetic condition that affects the collagen in your body. So I do sometimes have trouble with gripping things and stuff. And so I let her know that we've been trying to find a pediatric rheumatologist to get them evaluated for the genetic condition and kind of go from there. But that I would bring up the dysgraphia thing with them for my son, and hopefully they would be able to kind of take it from there as well, because she says he's not severe enough to where they would get the AEA involved in doing therapy at school for it or through the school for it. So if we can get the rheumatologist involved or even his pediatrician and everything, get that going. And she mentioned a few things that she's going to try in the classroom with him of working on different things to kind of help strengthen his hands a little better. And when we got home, I showed him something that one of my physical therapists had given to me on ways to kind of strengthen the hand muscles as well. So there's that at least. You've actually probably heard my kids a few times now throughout this recording because they are playing board games in the living room and getting a little wild and crazy out there. But yeah, so it's been, I mean, I know it's been a while since I've uploaded. And like I said, some of that is personal issues before all of the medical stuff hit earlier this year. So I've been trying to sort out a lot of life stuff over the last year and a half. Some of which I'm not going to go into, like I said, just because it's very personal things, mental health issues and stuff, just stemming from a lot of things that have happened, and trying to deal with all of that. But yeah, that is an explanation for you all as to why I haven't been streaming on Twitch like I used to, or uploading videos very much, and things, but I am trying to work on that. I've got a good group going that's going to get into kind of voice acting stuff in our in one of our Discord servers that is exclusively for writers and artists and voice actors, and basically anything artistic or creative endeavors type thing. It's kind of our little safe haven away from all the fans that go, oh, I really wish you could do this, or could you make this for me, or could you write me into your story, and things like that. And I mean, while we do make some requests of each other, it's primarily here's this art, or here's this thing I wrote, or here's all these prompts of different, writing prompts or art prompts, or asking advice on how do I do this thing, kind of thing. So it's a really great supportive community as well, in terms of creative stuff. But we are going to start doing some voice acting recordings and things like that. Our first session actually got messed up and didn't get recorded like it was supposed to, like we thought it did. So we're kind of sorting out some kinks and stuff. But if you wanted to check that out when it does get going, it is Demiurgic VA on YouTube. That is DEMIURGIC VA on YouTube. And I will toss a link in as well. And we do have an email and a Twitter at DemiurgicVA. Trying to think if there's anything else with that. It's pretty international, as with any online community. We've got a range. I'm American. My friend Pixie, who co-runs the server with me, she's one of the leaders of the server. She's Canadian. One of our most active VA people is Australian, which makes like trying to record and organize things with him interesting because he's 15 hours ahead of me, I believe. But yeah, so it gets interesting. But we have a good time. Funny enough, what did record of our first session was mostly bloopers of just goofy shit happening. Anyway, that is just kind of my update on why I haven't been uploading a lot, but also kind of letting you guys know that I will be. Not just over on the Demiurgic YouTube, but also on my own. I'm going to start getting some more writing related stuff put up, things that I've been meaning to record, potentially some podcasts as well, not just on my channel, but also on the Demiurgic channel. So yeah, that is kind of an update, and I tried to condense it as much as I could, but it's still a lot. So yeah, that's about it, and hopefully you guys will see more from me soon.